Welcome to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast, where we break down the complex and emotional process of divorce into manageable, easy-to-understand steps. I'm your host, Greer Howard, and with me is Bobby Buchanan, widely recognized as one of Illinois' top divorce attorneys, offering unmatched insight and experience in family law. Well, Bobby, today we have another spicy topic. We are going to be talking about maintenance, which is spousal support or alimony, depending on where you live. But in Illinois, we call it maintenance. And, there's a lot of misconceptions around maintenance. And, some people think that, they're entitled to it no matter what. Some people think that if they're going to have to pay it, they're going to have to pay it forever. But there really are, some ways that we can kind of navigate through this and make it a little bit better and easier to understand for people out there. So why don't we just kind of start today with who receives maintenance or spousal support and how does it work?
Yeah, hey Greer, I like that you called it spicy because it's definitely a hot topic. It's one I think that most people have some sort of emotional reaction to when we think about it. Think about whether or not we would have to pay it if we get divorced or if we're going to receive it. So yeah, let's dive into it and talk about kind of all the basics in this episode. We'll probably end up doing another one because there are some nuances to alimony. I like to call it alimony, but when we're in court, we do call it maintenance. But for our sake, I'll call it alimony today. So when do you get alimony? Well, you get alimony. The most typical circumstance is when there is a large disparity in the incomes of the parties. Your spouse is making a bunch more money than you, and your marriage is a bit on the longer side. Although technically you can get alimony if you are married for 1 year. We'll break down the duration aspect of it. But really what we're looking at is there a big disparity in income or a big disparity in earning potential? What's the length of the marriage? What's the lifestyle of the parties? This is what we call a factor test in the law. It means that there's no bright line rule or black and white formula to say you will get alimony in this circumstance. The first thing the court has to do, the judge, is say, okay, what are these different factors? Is there a big enough disparity? What was the lifestyle they were looking at? What's the earning potential? After the judge looks at all that, then they'll say, okay, this is a maintenance case, and then we'll dive into the formula side of it.
Okay, so we can basically say that to start with, there's a sliding scale. Let's say there's a sliding scale kind of depending on a few factors. And I think, one of the things that people, tend to think is if they are married longer, that it always results in alimony. Is that true?
No, I mean, there's no reason. You could be married for 30 years and not be entitled to alimony. And the most common example of that is you and your spouse both work. And even if you worked harder, made a little bit more money, saved a little bit more into your 401k, that doesn't mean you're going to be paying alimony. Just because you were the one that was home raising the kids, but you also worked, doesn't mean you'll be getting alimony. So we can't just look at the duration. We really have to look at that income disparity, that earning potential. That's the piece. I think, I'm not a legal historian here, but when alimony is really about, historically, we had these very traditional roles, right? We had the man goes to work, the woman raises the child. So if there is a divorce, well, the man is in a much better place to continue supporting himself financially, while the woman has sacrificed many, many years of growing her education, her career, her earning potential for raising the kids. And so alimony is about balancing that out and making sure that she's still financially stable. There is no, just to be clear, there is no gender in the law regarding alimony. It says nothing about husband, wife, man, woman. And it's very common when you have a situation where the woman makes quite a bit more than the man that she is going to be paying alimony to the man. It happens all the time.
Right, right. I mean, especially women have, really made a lot of strides in the career, aspect of things over the last several years. So that certainly can be the case. So you're really kind of just to make sure I'm understanding it, it's really whether you worked or you didn't work, maybe both spouses worked, but one of them made significantly more than the other,
Yeah.
or one of the spouses stayed home to either take care of the kids and that type of thing, and then the other works, so obviously there's even a bigger disparity. That is when alimony is typically going to come into play, right?
Yeah, the most common scenario is where one person stayed home to take care of the kids. They make significantly less now. They have less of an education, less of a career experiences and growth, less earning potential. And then the other person has continued growing their career over years. And so there's just this imbalance. And,
Yeah.
and so alimony is there to kind of level out the playing field. But there's a lot of in between there where alimony could play a part if there is a big income disparity.
Right. Okay, so that brings me to a couple things I want to get clear beginning of our conversation. Alimony is not the same thing as child support.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely not the same. Child support is, and there's two different formulas. There's a specific formula for child support, specific one for alimony. And child support is for the kids. Specifically,
Mhm.
if there's kids involved, we look at what's the income of both parties, who has the kids, how many overnights per year, and then we say, okay, this is the payment for child support. Alimony, there doesn't need to be kids at all for alimony to exist. There could be, could not, and that's a separate payment. They do have an interplay. When we are
Mhm.
calculating child support, we have to look, is there also an alimony payment? And that'll play a part in calculating both, but they are separate. So good question, good clarification.
Child support is a whole different episode, folks. Totally different episode. And then the other thing that I just, I wanna kind of just talk about, let's say it's, a couple that, has some wealth, has some money. Alimony is separate from splitting assets also, correct?
Yes, it is. It's separate from splitting assets, but kind of like everything in divorce, there is some interaction between all of those aspects. So, and when we do talk about alimony and how long it's going to last, there's something called a maintenance buyout or an alimony buyout. We're not really going to touch on it too much in this episode, but it's this idea of maybe instead of paying maintenance over all these years, you're just going to give a higher percentage of the marital estate to the other side. So when there are a lot of assets involved, that becomes an option that isn't as much of an option for people that don't have as many assets.
Yeah, which in some ways would be nice because then you're sort of like you're done. You kinda cut it off and you're done. I kinda like that.
It's a great solution, actually. I mean, I think that when we do divorce, the less entangled that we can be financially, the better for, for really co-parenting reasons and kind of mental health reasons as well. It can be big. I mean, this kind of reminds me of it almost sounds like a cliche. And probably is a good segue into talking about the no fault aspect, but we do have situations, you might have heard about this before, where our client is receiving alimony checks, and you know how you can get those custom checks where like you choose the picture,
Oh,
like you
yeah.
could choose like the
Yeah.
background on your check, so you could have it be like a picture of your kids, or you probably wouldn't do your kids, but anything, you could choose any picture you want. So this individual has chosen that he's going to send his alimony checks with custom checks of him and his new wife on the check. Yeah. So spicy.
That
When we
is
talk about
spicy.
when we talk
Every
about
time you're cashing that check, you're just looking at that
yeah.
new woman.
So yeah.
Which okay, so let's say in theory that this new woman, maybe that relationship started, before the marriage was over. Does alimony is it affected if one spouse cheats?
Yeah. So great question. Very common question. The short answer is no. Infidelity doesn't have anything to do with the alimony calculation for the most part. Illinois is a no-fault state, meaning we don't get into kind of the moral aspects of divorce when we're deciding what happens. So theoretically, or not even theoretically, not uncommonly, let's say that I'm the primary breadwinner. I've worked hard for 10 years building my career. And I've gone to work, and my wife was raising the kids, and she starts to have an affair with somebody and has this affair for years, or not even years, whatever. And I find out about it. And then I'm like, we'll repair it. I'll forgive you. Let's go to therapy. Let's figure it out. And she says, no, I'm leaving you for this other man. Do I have to pay alimony? The short answer is I might. Very good chance I do have to pay alimony. Even though my wife has been cheating on me behind my back for years, stabbed me in the back, broke my heart, all this stuff, I then might have to cut checks to her every month for X number of years.
Okay, well, you know what, Bobby? In that case, I hope you do put your new girl on that check.
Yeah,
Maybe
right?
why not?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if personally I would do that. I would probably just, run off and live in the tropics or something like that, and
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
brutal.
diss
But
out my old life.
what if she marries this guy? What if she's living with this guy or marries this guy? Does that change it at all?
That very well could change it. I'm gonna save my answer for the
Okay,
end of
hang
our
tight,
episode.
hang
Good
tight.
question.
Okay,
Great
so
question.
we're gonna come back to that question, but first, let's talk about how it's calculated, because we've sort of talked about some of the instances of, okay, this may be an instance where you would pay alimony or receive alimony, but there's a calculation. So how does that sort of work to give people a ballpark idea?
Yeah, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. So it's a pretty basic formula. You take 33. So if I'm paying maintenance to you, Greer, we're going to take 33% of my net income, my after-tax income. We're going to subtract 25% of your after-tax income. And that's it. That gives us our maintenance figure. So, and then there's this other piece where the total cannot exceed 40%. So the total combined.
Now, does that 40% play into, like, does child support, like, is alimony plus child support 40% or just alimony?
Just alimony. So child support could push you over. So that's it right there. Is 31,500 is how much I'm going to be paying to you per year. It's
Okay.
a monthly payment. So whatever that is divided by 12, approximately, I don't know, I'm going to guess 2,800 or something like that. So I'm paying approximately 2,800, which is no small feat for someone. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah. It's hard to, like, wrap your head around it, because on one end, on your end, at making 100, giving away 33 or whatever it was, that's a lot. That's a lot of money, and that doesn't leave you as much. But then on the other end, I'm not, like, even with the 33 with the 10, that's not much either to live off of. But also, I feel like at some point where, like, I guess I always go back to, like, where's the personal responsibility at some point of, like, if I'm not making enough with alimony and what I'm making, is there a point when you're like, okay, maybe you need to, like, get a job to help supplement some of that?
Yeah, I mean, you do. I mean, your alimony is what your alimony is. Like, and one thing I think that we need to touch on here, where we said you make 10,000, realistically, a judge is probably not going to accept that number. What they're going to do is called impute income to you. So 10,000 is really less than minimum wage every year. So at a minimum, the judge is going to say, okay, we're going to assume you can make minimum wage. So that's generally the lower of the incomes, unless there's some extenuating circumstance. Maybe you're disabled or something and you can't work, or maybe we have 7 kids and there's no way you can work with all those kids. So, but otherwise, we're going to impute income to you, and so you make at least minimum wage. As far as the personal responsibility bit, I think that's where the formula bakes in the duration. So let's talk about the duration a little
Yeah.
bit.
So how long like, how long are you obligated to get that alimony? That being known?
Forever.
Forever? No, that's
Not forever. It's based on how long we've been married. So,
Well, we're so young, we couldn't have been married that long.
right? Uh, so for my sake, let's hope it's 5 years. So if you've been married 5 years, you take 20% of the marriage length, which would be 1 year. So a marriage of 5 years, you're going to pay maintenance for 1 year.
Okay, 1 year.
The longer you've been married, the higher the percentage of the marriage length you're going to take until we get to 19 years, where it's 80%. And then if we go over to 20, that's where judges start to have more discretion, and they're going to say, well, we're going to do the entire length of the marriage, or we're going to make this permanent maintenance. So if you're over 20 years, it can get real sticky real fast as far as how long it's going to be. But there's this scale. So the longer you've been married, the higher the percentage you're going to pay, or the longer the duration is going to be. So a marriage of 12 years is going to be a 52% duration. So about 6.25 years.
Right. And when you say percentage, just to make sure we're being really clear for everybody, the actual amount isn't changing. The percentage of your income is not changing. It's the duration of how long you're going to have to pay it. Correct? Does that make sense?
Exactly. So a marriage of 10 years is going to be 44% duration. So it's going to be 4.4 years long. So the longer you're married, the higher percentage duration it's going to be. So that's where the personal responsibility aspect can come into play, where the formula is already there, saying, you're not going to get a free ride if you've only been married for 7 years. The other side is there is this concept of reviewable maintenance. So these are guidelines. A judge doesn't have to follow these. And a judge could say, well, I'm going to give you maintenance for 3 years, but it's going to be reviewable, meaning you have to petition the court and come back in and show the court that you've been trying to get a job. You've been trying to make more money. And if you just do nothing during those 3 years and come back and try to get more maintenance, there's a fair chance the judge says no. So there is an aspect of personal responsibility here, more and more so the shorter duration of the marriage. If you've been married for a long, long time, then things can kind of start to lock in different ways.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're unsure about alimony, the two things you really want to be thinking about is the disparity in income, right, between the two spouses, and then how long you were married. So those are kind of the two main things that are going to come into play with the formula, and everybody's is going to be a little bit different.
Yes, and you should start thinking about, is there an opportunity for a maintenance buyout here? Because if there is an opportunity for a maintenance buyout, that can really be a win-win for both sides. You can, as the person who might have to pay maintenance, you can get out from under that obligation. And for the person who's going to receive it, you might be able to get a lump sum instead of getting these payments over the years. It's kind of like when you win the lottery, they give you the choice. Do you want to get a lump sum or do you want to get paid over 20 years? Exact same idea. If you get the lump sum, you get like half or something, because there's this concept of the time value, duration of money, or, if I get $1 million today, that's worth a lot more than $1 million over the course of the next 20 years.
Right. I guess it depends on your personality and your financial responsibility as well, Bobby, because
yeah, well, absolutely.
Some people would get a large sum and couldn't handle it, and then others would be able to get a large sum and be able to double it, in time, because they're smart with it. So that's interesting.
And you also got to think about, there is no sure thing here, as far as if you say, well, I'm going to just get them alimony over the next 20 years. There's no guarantee that your spouse doesn't lose their job, for whatever reason, or that they don't pass away, or, something different doesn't happen. So the idea of getting the lump sum up front can be very attractive if that's a possibility.
Yeah. And let's say that the spouse that is paying, maintenance does lose their job. They can go back to court and let them know that, right? And then that's how it would change.
Yes, and they can, but it's tricky because a lot of people, they hate the idea, the spicy maintenance. They don't want to pay the spicy maintenance. And so they're going, well, I'm willing to, lose my job in order to not have to pay
Mm.
maintenance. So judges are very well aware that people play those sorts of games. So going back into court and saying, well, I lost my job is not a silver bullet. You have to really prove, you have to show why. Was it a legitimate reason that you lost your job? Maybe the economy is tanking, so everyone's losing their jobs and you can't get another job like that. Well, then that's a much better situation for you as far as stopping your maintenance than you got fired for, using the photocopy machine in inappropriate ways.
Right. Well, that makes me think. I mean, are there silver bullets that like definitely are going to change it? That it's going to end or it's going to change.
Yeah, the big one, now we can jump back to this one, is that cohabitation. So
We
you're
were
you
talking about that. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
your wife cheated. She's got this hot new boyfriend. She moves in with him. Now what happens?
Yeah, now, so she moved into him with him because either she just loves him that much more than she loved me, and she just wants to dive back in. I know it's
That's
hard to understand, it's hard to
horrible.
contemplate, but it happened. So she just moves back in with him. In that case, maintenance is going to stop. Like if you cohabitate with somebody else, basically in a romantic relationship sort of way, you don't continue to get maintenance from the other person. That
Mhm.
stops maintenance. But there's always gray areas. So we've had cases where people say, no, that's just my roommate. In that case, you do have to possibly get private investigators involved. You have to look at, well, are you sharing bills? Are you going on vacations together? We know those things that would make a roommate and a romantic partner a romantic partner. So as attorneys, we have to look at trying to prove that. So that's a big one that will
So
stop me.
you can it literally can just be your cohabitating. You don't have to remarry because I don't know where in my mind I thought maybe it was that you had to remarry and it would be affected. But what you're saying is cohabitation is
Cohabitation in a romantic sort of way is enough. So that's a big one. Significant financial changes, like we talked about, losing your job, or let's say the other person, they get some huge promotion. They start to really crush it in their career, and now they're making as much as you. That could be a reason to stop maintenance. And then retirement is a really common one as well, that and these things are usually contemplated during the divorce process, is looking at, okay, when retirement happens, we sometimes put language in there saying that that's going to be considered a substantial financial change, and maintenance is modifiable at that point. So those are the three big ways that maintenance can stop.
yeah. I keep in my head, I just keep laughing. I'm sorry, I know it's the legal term is maintenance, but I just keep thinking about like a well-kept woman.
I know
I think
it's a very
writing this check to make sure she got her Botox. It's like, wait,
I know. We're preserving. It should be called, we're preserving her. It's preserves.
right. I know I know it's the alimony, but just cracks me up every time I hear it because I'm like, gosh, it just sounds like, it's keeping up with the Joneses or something.
I know.
Um,
It's my maintenance regimen.
yeah, your maintenance. So, do you think alimony is fair? Like, how do you feel about alimony? Not that the law actually cares about how you
Yeah,
feel.
well, exactly. Does it really matter how I feel? I don't think it matters how I feel. That's what I always like. And it doesn't matter how you feel, but because a big part of getting through this divorce process is kind of accepting what is, and kind of going along with it, and figuring out where we can compromise. Again, if there's a reason to fight against alimony, if you have legal basis for that, then it may make a lot of sense. But to answer your question, because I don't want to avoid it completely, I think that alimony does serve a purpose. I mean, I know in my own marriage, like my wife is the stay-at-home mom and she's making sacrifices as far as her career goes in order
Right.
to do that. So I can appreciate why if the marriage ends, it wouldn't be totally fair for her to be left high and dry, nor would it be good for the kids either, because child support generally is not going to kind of make up for the difference. So I think it should. I don't love the idea that she could be, cheating on me, and that's a really hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I think, I agree with you. It's like, everybody's situation is so different. So I feel like there are certainly situations where alimony makes sense and it's a good option to have. And I guess my thought of it is like, especially to give them a launching pad, like a place to restart. I think, where I would maybe start to get a little annoyed with it is if after time there was no like personal responsibility taken, after, a certain amount of years. I feel like at some point you need to like take responsibility for yourself. But yeah, I mean, there definitely is a place for alimony. So I think it's, a great option to have in certain situations, and hopefully people aren't taking advantage of it. We laugh about the quote maintenance, but there's certainly situations where it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe they should make it's like you want to see that the other person is making real attempts at catching up to you financially. It's like, hey, I've worked my butt off for 10 years. Like, this didn't just happen where I make this money. I worked really hard. So if you want to be have the same lifestyle as me now that we're not together, you have to work equally as hard. So, there being more review throughout the maintenance duration could make sense. But like we said, it doesn't really matter. The law doesn't care about your feeling.
No.
Divorce process doesn't care about your feelings. So on one hand, let's accept what it is, work within that framework, and then we can bitch about it with our girlfriends or our boyfriends or, whoever else on the side.
That's right. And maybe we'll be sending a check with our picture on it. So that's a whole new visual I hadn't really
Maybe
thought
I'll
about.
direct deposit. You can give me a direct deposit. I'll take that.
Oh my gosh. Well, Bobby, as always, thanks so much for being here with me today. A very interesting conversation. And hopefully you guys learned as much about maintenance / spousal support / alimony as I did today.
Thank you for listening to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast. We hope today's episode gave you clarity and support as you move forward on your journey. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Tune in next week for more insights and expert advice on the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast.